Hey guys, it's David. Today we're going to talk about the Bloblobber and some top 500 data from Lean, not to mention a very long viewer comment today on the Splat report. Alright, so let's get right into, let me try to adjust this a little bit. Let me get right into the top 500 data from Lean. There's a lot of stuff in it. I'm not really going to go over all of it, but what I think is the most interesting about this is seeing the most used weapon in a certain mode, and he has that sorted out. So for July, you could probably guess which weapon is the most used. And it's M-Parry. But what's really interesting is it's not the most used weapon in every single mode. It's outdone by one weapon in Splat zones. Can you guess what that weapon is, though? It's the Explosher. Kind of shocking, but the Explosher has basically the M-Parry showed up 39 times Splat zones in the top 100 for July. The Explosher ended up showing up 49 times in the top 500. And the Slosher Deco was actually just a little bit below the M-Parry at 35. But it's pretty interesting to see the rise of the Explosher. I know Dynamon's been using it a lot. We might talk about it a little later in the comment I mentioned. So we'll discuss more about the Explosher then. Alright. So that was probably the most interesting thing in the top 500. There's a lot of cool data to go over in it. If you guys think there's anything cool in there, let me know so I can talk about it too. But as far as I know, the weapon usage was the coolest thing, and it really shows the sort of dominance that the M-Parry has right now. But it was really interesting to see the Explosher show up and beat it in Splat zones. And I also think it seemed like Splat zones had the largest variety of weapons. You know, because Rainmaker had like 87, the M-Parry had like 87 or something like that. It's definitely most dominant in other modes than it is, especially like TC and Rainmaker especially, but that was really cool to see. Next, we're going to talk about the Bloblobber. And this thing I had a lot of conversation about it, and it was funny because I think it was like Toad Silly T tweeted out, I guess the Japanese players, a lot of Japanese players have been clamoring for it to be nerfed. I know there's been a lot of clamoring over here for it to be nerfed. A lot of people think it's just way too strong, and it is a strong weapon, no doubt. I did retweet on my Splat Report account video by General Storm, kind of trying to make the case that it isn't OP. I think it's an interesting conversation because last month we had the same thing about the ballpoint Splat, like that it was just too good, but I've yet to really see it, take hold in the meta at all. It's just not. Let me adjust this a little bit. I haven't really seen it take hold in the meta, and I'm just wondering, like, same thing with the Bloblobber. I haven't really seen it get used too much either. So I'm really just wondering if it's not, being used the top level of play at all, then does it really need to be nerfed? I mean, you can say, like, yeah, there's certain elements in certain maps where it's very powerful, but if it's not, you have like the Inkjet, and like I went over the top 500 stats with the M-Parry, just how much it's warping the meta. And I think one of the reasons Chargers have come back is because they're so good at shutting down Inkjet. I mean, is the Bloblobber what we should really be worrying about? And it's a unique weapon, and I think the argument that like people just need time to adapt to it could be valid. I don't know. For me, if it does get nerfed, I hope it's very small in the next patch. I don't think it really needs a nerf at the moment. My whole thing is with like if a weapon's OP, is it being used like multiples on a certain map? Like, the Tri-Slosher back in its day when you'd see like triple Tri-Slosher comps. That was outrageous. This, I don't see that happening. I know I see people like memeing with it, and in some ways they win, but until I really see like the very top really abusing it to the point where I'm like, yeah, that's when I say like, yeah, that definitely needs a nerf. But at the moment, I think it's M-Perry or Inkjet, one of the two that probably needs to be taken a look at. All right, so moving on from that topic, we actually might go over quite a few different things related to this. In this this week's comment, that was on my Platinum Cup video. All right, this is my Sydney Dunaway. I'm a little disappointed so many people are focusing on whether or not the Platinum Cup's meant to be competitive. There are so many fascinating things to analyze from the sets, and no one's talking about them. No one except Sydney. All right, and of course me now, because I'm going to go over them too. Let's see. Number 1, counterpick system. Soren and quite a few other players win overseas seem to vastly prefer this to having maps in hands of the tournament organizers. You mentioned the GG/SCDX set, which had 2 Rainmaker games of all things, and came down to who could throw those Rainmaker games harder. So, I think the counterpick system actually is really interesting. I think one of the only arguments people have made is like, from a TO bring perspective, some teams just take way too long to come up with a counter. And, that can kind of extend the time. I mean, you could always, kind of speed that along or kind of force players to make, those decisions quickly. But yeah, it's definitely a cool system. The counterpick system, I think mainly a lot of people don't like it because, they don't really like the fact that like 2 Rainmaker games, or they feel like Splat Zones is competitive, or Splat Zones is the most competitive. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, like, they're all modes in the game. They're all used in ranked. So, is that argument really, the TOs, is it really an argument that counterpick system is better, or it's just that, other modes aren't competitive compared to Splat Zones? Though, that's probably something for another video, but I do think the counterpick system is really cool. Will it become the tournament? I don't know if it'll become the tournament standard, but it's definitely cool to see someone like Sendo using it in their tournament, and hopefully we'll see it in some other tournaments too. Let's see. Map mode plays such... Oh, this is the second part of this thing. I should have read that first. Map mode plays such a prevalent part of team comp and team strength, and it would add another layer of tactics to the game. I'd like to see a counterpick system more often in the Western scene, although maybe restricted to monthly map rotations. Seeing Black Belly Rainmaker, which is banned by Nintendo, was rather dark. Yeah, people, that is the one thing that you run into a counterpick system if it doesn't have any sort of regulation on it, is people just probably choose the cheesiest thing that they can throw out and try and get some cheap wins on it. But again, that's cheese is another form of tactics. So we could say, yeah, I think banning it to restricting it to mathlete run rotation is probably a good idea. That way, because you still have to practice and you want to try and be as competent as you can. But a map mode system could really have some really cool tactics, especially if you really rehearse a certain tactic on a map and have that as your ace in the hole. That'd be a cool level of gameplay. I could definitely see that. I agree with you there. 2, dualies. This is the second point. Dualies continue to show their dominance. We also saw a bit of Brella, which is both surprising and intriguing. I know Cross has been playing that as an alternative to Blaster on quite a few maps. I'll be curious to see if it sees more use in the meta overall, as people are calling it a counter to dualies. The new bathtub weapon seems like it'd be really good on maps with a lot of elevation, like Moray and Schellendorf. I do agree with the Bloblobber. It does seem really good, especially on Moray when you just rain down the ramps, hee 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 hee. And of course the wall is pretty good on those narrow corridors too. The Brella definitely I think it's going to see a lot more play. Even saw Sendo practicing with it after he got back from Platinum Cup. I don't know if he really likes it, but I definitely see it's going to see more play if dualies are popular. I think I don't know if it's necessarily a straight up counter to dualies. It's just the thing is it paints so well, and the fact that you have the shield there and you can kind of keep dualies at bay with it, much better than the blasters can. Of course, because the one outpaints it, one it can kind of stall out for time while your backup takes care of them and it kind of helps prevent people from getting your back line a lot more. Definitely dualies have continued to dominate, especially Emperi. We'll see if they do anything with that. We'll see how the light treacherous kind of factor in too. A lot of things remain to be seen on the dualies. Number 3, Explosher. Feels like a very viable backline option over Charger. Paints more, reaches different areas of the map, and is great for chip damage teams, but doesn't have the same one-shot kill potential as Charger. You didn't mention it saw more play in splat zones earlier in the map. Explosher definitely seems like something that could be a really dominant backliner, especially I think if Inkjet sees a nerf. Right now, I think Splat Chargers are mostly here because Inkjet is just so strong right now, and a really good Charger can really help shut down a lot of Inkjets. Like, you have to be really careful when you're up against a really good enemy Charger because he'll blast out of the sky if you stay up too long. And it does really force them to kind of play around it. But if that gets nerfed, you're definitely going to see a lot of Explosher. That's how I feel. I mean, you've already seen how much it's used in splat zones. It paints amazing. I don't think any other backliner can match it. The fact you see Dynamon, a player that, main the Dynamo, kind of picking up as his main, you're going to see it kind of do the same thing that the Dynamo did, which is just absolutely paint everything and just shut down a lot of offense just strictly by the fact that it's really hard to approach when it just has so much coverage. It's definitely strong and definitely something to watch out for. I think some backliners may want to think about picking it up at some point. 4, speaking of backlines, SCDX was the only team that showed up without one. We know Hexen can use weapons like Custom Jet and Heavy, so why didn't he? Soren did an analysis of games and SCDX comps in general were just bizarre. I'm not sure exactly why he didn't. I do remember him tweeting out a while before the Platinum Cup that, remind me never to play a non-aggressive weapon again. I don't know if he's just frustrated with the Custom Jet or he doesn't like the kill potential, but I think that might have factored in that maybe he just doesn't believe in the Custom Jet anymore, or maybe he doesn't like backlines. He thinks an aggressive comp is more like an aggressive weapon is just more useful. It's hard to say, but I don't think, him not playing Custom Jet was necessarily him trying to throw. I think he feels like it's a better option. I'm not sure why he didn't use Custom Jet, but there's reason. 5. Some people are downplaying how poorly SDX played, but personally I thought they were an embarrassment. 9,000 plus Japanese viewers watched them get absolutely walloped on the podcast land, such as SNS were mentioned, but let's be real, who at SNS approached Ghost Gaming's level, let alone Libet Calamari? The format for Platinum Cup might not have been as competitive, but the level of the team sure as hell was. It'd be nice for SCDX to play like they cared at least a little. Yeah, I mean, they didn't. Obviously, it probably wasn't their best games. I know you had the tweet out afterwards of Kiver didn't think they were playing their best. It's hard to say. I mean, yeah, they are representing their team. They probably should have played better. I don't know the entire situation. And, there's always factors like jet lag or, just the fact that you're in a totally different place, totally different country. Maybe you're more focused on... I'm not really making an excuse for their play per se. When I said I just think the most important part of the Platinum Cup was more the sort of goodwill spread between the community, like the sort of unity, like one community type of vibe that was expressed by Platinum Cup. I mean, obviously, competitors should try and play their best. Oh, wait, there's a second part of it that I should probably get to. All-Star Game. This is kind of mentioned me talking about All-Star Games. All-Star Games tend not to be taken seriously because it's a whole bunch of players from different teams being thrown together to compete, sort of like the Turf War exhibition, but the actual sets had SAX playing as a team. Splatoon also doesn't have the same level of exposure as something like baseball or soccer, or the potential for injury that playing harder in an all-star game can get you. I mean, that I agree with. It's not. Though actually, that one Japanese player did hurt his wrist pretty bad, and that took him out. So playing hard in Splatoon, not as dangerous, but has its potential dangers. I don't know. I was really disappointed this sort of event that you're only going to see maybe once or twice a year. The way they played left a bad taste in my mouth. Exhibition or no, I mean I get that. I get why people are upset about that. They wanted to see the best of the best play their best, and definitely I can definitely see it. I just don't know all the factors in it. It's hard to go out and blame these people for, and whether or not I don't quite know how hard they tried or not. I know, I don't know if I see a lot of other players kind of getting down on how they played. I do think it did seem like Ghost practiced a lot more, and it's probably true that a lot of them did practice as much, at least, from what it kind of, the general idea. I mean, we're just kind of gathering pieces together based on what other players are saying, not them themselves. But it didn't seem like they practiced as much as, say, Ghost did. And especially like not as hard as they did for the Inkstorm Cup. There could be a lot, to there. I mean, and in some ways, they didn't actually earn that spot to Japan. It's almost like the trip itself was the prize for winning, and they didn't actually win it. There could be a lot of factors there. It's hard to say. So I'm not going to be so quick to condemn them or say like they played like shit. I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around how to put it. Yeah, I mean, they played poorly. I don't want to necessarily seem like I'm making excuses, but I can kind of understand why they didn't do it, or why they didn't, practice as much as, as maybe they should have, or why, I personally, like I said, I personally don't feel like the Platinum Cup, the whole real purpose, or like the most important part of the Platinum Cup was necessarily the competition itself. I guess that's the best way to put it. So that is it for your question. Thank you very much, Sydney, for your well-written, very robust comment. Like I said, I'm glad to talk about. I mean, if I get like 10 comments, I couldn't discuss 10 comments like these on a Splat report, but I do love to have a conversation with you guys. So please leave your comments below and check me out on inktv.media. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Thank you so much for watching the Splat report. I'll see you guys later.